we're not trained well, you know, like, geez, we're trained right now to put up all our walls, and like the systems are in place that, like, you know, keep us separated. And I think we owe it to ourselves to, you know, figure out ways to, like I said, build those bridges.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. We've made it to Thursday, which I think is an accomplishment, right? I hope you guys are all hanging in there. Clearly, we're in for a little bit of a wild ride, par for the course when it comes to 2020, right? Well, tonight for our IG Live, we have Karla, who's going to be joining us shortly. Karla is part of a sister team that she's an officiant, but she also does a million other things. And really, you know, when it comes down to kind of her passion for what she does, there's a lot of different reasons. And one of the things that I love about is that there's so much kind of overlap and intersectionality that comes with it. And so Karla's joining us. There she is. Hey,
Hi.
Karla.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, no, thank you so much for being a part and joining us. I mean, I think right now, you know, so many people are just really one on the edge of their seats, which
Yeah.
we all are, but also a little bit of a reprieve from, you know, election tallies, waiting, you know, and I always think that one of the most important things that you can do with your time, no matter what it is being able to learn something new and meet new people and learn from them. Because I think no matter what happens, we're hopeful, of course, but no matter what happens, that if we can somehow come away with something from this waiting period, which, you know, it's not going to end like tonight. So, I mean, we can hope, but I doubt it's going to end tonight.
Yeah.
If we can come away with something and just to learn a little bit more, to be a little bit better, I think it's always a good use of our time. So thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for having me. And thank you for sort of putting it in that manner, because I think that focusing on the relationships that we have, the interactions that we have with each other as human beings, right? The more we can find connections and common ground, the better. And I think that right now we're living through a time where it doesn't seem possible. You know, it feels very challenging, very difficult to do. But I think it's exactly right now when we need to figure out how to build those bridges, you know, in whatever space we might be in.
Mm-hmm.
But also do it with integrity and honesty and just really your truth.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that that's something that we need to start normalizing, just like we need to start normalizing that elections aren't decided and ended in one night.
Right.
That's just not how it is. So especially given the circumstances of this particular election with COVID, right? I think, unfortunately, we keep forgetting about, you know, what we're going through in terms of the pandemic. And that's a real thing, something that's impacting all of us. And again, something that hopefully, right, we're learning from so that we can, once we come out of this, we're going to come out of it stronger, more united, and in a healthier place. At least that's my hope. And I appreciate, you know, being given this platform to kind of share a little bit about, you know, what I'm learning and hopefully resonate with your audience. So
I love it.
shoot with your questions.
I love it. I love it. So for anyone who doesn't know, and I saw a few people, I was just going to say hi. I saw Chanda join. Stars by Lee. Hello. Um, Miss Pedacio.
Mis pedacitos de amor. That's actually my sister Dani. She's using another account.
Love it. I love it. Hello, hello. Holding on for dear life. Absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining. I think one of the things, you know, that if someone who, you know, they don't know you, why don't you start out and tell them a little bit about kind of your background, what led you to be a part of
Sure.
the industry, and kind of
Yeah.
your love for celebrating love.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Karla. I think you were saying that I'm the the one sister half of a sister team, and I am. I'm with Once Upon a Vow. My sister Daniela is the one that started the company, and thanks to her, I've been able to find a space that has been incredibly welcoming to me, and that feels like really in a good place to push boundaries a little bit more and really help in sort of the shift of consciousness that we're experiencing right now in a very positive direction. So I feel very fortunate to be in this space and to have had my sister guide me, bring me on, but also guide me through it. And she brought me here. She brought me into the space because she figured that there was really it was going to be a good fit because of who I am, but also because of some of the gaps that exist in the industry. Right. I'm sure you've had many conversations with many other industry leaders and business owners who, you know, see the business for what it is, and it's very whitewashed, very cis heteronormative, and still very exclusionary of many people. But I think that based on what I've been seeing, based on what I've been hearing, based on the interactions that I've been having, I'm super hopeful that there are many folks in the industry that are really like willing to look at themselves more honestly now and really be able to face the reality that they also need to participate in that shift. You know, they need to be active members of pushing themselves and others towards that, you know, wave of like more inclusivity, more understanding, and really taking that privilege that I think we all have and using it for good. So I'm psyched to be in this space. So that's a little bit about me. My background, I was in education formerly, so I do have a tendency to, you know, sometimes preach. That's an education background, get in front of a classroom or get in front of, you know, peers and just kind of, you know, speak my mind, right? Apologies ahead of time that I might go on rants and just like get on my little, you know, on stage maybe, but in front of a classroom is how I envision it. But that's my background, and I left education actually because I really did hit a place where that was not at all the place where I thought I would be, and it was a place of feeling incredibly alone because I had moved up the ladder and I had, you know, reached a position of authority, and you know, I was one of the leaders in a school. So I was a teacher in a public school in Philadelphia, actually. But most recently, I was an administrator for a charter school and a K-8 school. Anyway, point is that in my experience in education, I was really excited to like, you know, have gained the position and have you know, to be in a space of potentially making decisions, right? And finding myself very much alone because I was the only, you know, person of color, and I was speaking to issues that some folks were not interested in hearing about. And so that's been something that I've experienced for most of my career in different ways, but this one was definitely the most difficult, right? Because I faced what many people face when they are the only person of, you know, some kind of identity that, and they're alone, you know, and especially if they're vocal and they want to talk about the issues that really matter. So point is, that's my background. I'm super excited to be here. My sister knew I had a knack for this, you know, and I love that what I get to do is talk about love and see the incredibly beautiful relationships that exist, you know, in New York and Boston and all the places that I've been, and really just get really pumped about like our humanity because I meet people from just everywhere, all kinds of folks from different, you know, types of places with different, you know, mindsets, different ideas. But at the end of the day, the ones that are coming to us are the ones that are, you know, have some awareness of like the role they play in really trying to make this world a better place, right? And it starts with their relationship and it starts with them individually. And I think that's really something that we need to start talking about and centering our industry around, the actual relationships that we're celebrating. So
I love
I
that.
think I covered most of what you asked. I
Yeah,
hope it
man, I love
didn't.
it. I love it. And that's so true. I see Morris. Morris is here, Shades of Grey, and Vidhi. Hello. I think
Hey.
it's one of those things that, you know, when it comes to, I think for those of us who've been in the industry forever, you
Mhm.
know, I've been in the industry for 20 years, so I've seen it from like literally like the old school. We have two options. You can choose package A or package B. One is
Right.
peach and one is like pink. You know, like these are the two options.
Right.
Um, to now, there's so much individuality and there's so much focus on the relationship. It's no longer just about this kind of traditional ceremony, or, this is what my parents did, so I have to do that too. It really has to do with that love, which I think it's amazing. And so what's one of the things that you do to kind of get to know, your couple's stories, to be able to tell it well and to celebrate it well?
Sure. Well, first of all, I got to say that that's the reason that we as officiants are in this industry, right? Like, I think it's an industry that still doesn't really quite know what the role of officiant is. We still have a lot of like traditional ideas of, who is actually getting people married, like, religious priests, ministers. But it's less known about like secular officiants that are offering services that people want, I think, because they do. There is more focus on the relationship, right? And we can go deeper than that and really focus on the stories of our couples. So yes, there is more diversity. I know what you mean. Like you see a lot more. I've always been like just amazed. Like now that once I got into it, just like all the options, I got so excited. I was like, oh my God, I can really do anything, And that's the reason why, I exist in this industry, because yeah, your wedding could be anything, including your ceremony. It doesn't have to be that drab, boring, traditional stuff that you're used to. And you can incorporate some of the stuff that maybe is something that really is meaningful in some way, absolutely. But it doesn't have to be the same old, because it can be about you. And so our job as officiants, as custom storytellers, we have to get to know our couples. Otherwise, how can we, share their stories? So for the packages that we offer that are very much the customized ceremony packages, we have to have, first we start with a questionnaire that we send out, and then we have at least a 1 hour session that we go through online. Back in the day when we could meet people in person, that used to happen, but everything's online now. So what are you going to do? Including weddings. If you don't know, virtual ceremonies are a possibility in New York. So anyway, so we have to ask the questions that like really sometimes may feel a little bit nosy and like a little like too much, but I'm trying to get the story, the real story, right? And sometimes couples can be a little bit reserved, right? And so it takes a little bit of work. Some folks are ready to tell their story, and I love that. I'm like, yes, tell me more. And we're like, all we do is just sit there and like, more, please. It's like the best, right? And I welcome that. Please, if you are somebody that's like, someone should tell my story, we're the people for you, But if you're a little bit more reserved and you need a little bit of coaxing, that's okay. We're there for you too, because we are by nature nosy. Okay, we just are, and we ask a lot of questions. We're both Scorpios, so we go deep. So it's just our natural tendency. So it's very authentic, right? So we'll talk to you like you're our friends, right? And that's what we end up with sometimes, like actual friends. My sister has a bestie right now that happened to be one of the couples that she had. So like that happens because we connect with our couples so deeply, because we get to know their story and we can relate, we resonate, right? And so, yeah, I ask the questions that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily get, and some of them might be a little bit standard that you've thought about before, right? But occasionally you surprise a couple and they're like, oh God, I don't know. I never thought about that, And then you get to see, who in the pair like might be more open to that, who might be a little bit more reserved. But sometimes it's the ones that are a little bit more reserved that, man, they end up opening up and you're like, yes, give me more, So it's really an incredible experience. I love that about this job, that I get to know people because I've always loved people. Like people have been my jam. Everything that I've done, like I've always just enjoyed getting to know others, and like people from all backgrounds. I was in the military for 7 years, and I have never met more people that were very, very different from me, right? And I'd never been in a situation where I was explicitly having to be not who I am, like, because I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right? And so it was an incredibly conflicted like experience for me, right? Especially having been an immigrant, or being an immigrant, and having been formerly undocumented, right? Because all of that plays into my experience. But like through my relationships with like the people that I met, right? Both in my own flight with my own base, and then as I went overseas, it was just an incredible thing to be able to meet people from all over the United States, all over the world, and really connect with them on just a one-on-one level. Hey, you, this is me. We got a vibe. We got to work together. And so I've been fortunate to be able to manage a lot of challenging experiences and situations. I think because I've built some skills around being able to talk to pretty much anyone, you know, and so that helps in this business too. And I'm psyched for it. I love it. I want more of it, and I think that more and more people are looking for that as well. We just have a hard time with it sometimes because we're not trained well, you know, like, geez, we're trained right now to put up all our walls, and like the systems are in place that, like, you know, keep us separated. And I think we owe it to ourselves to, you know, figure out ways to, like I said, build those bridges. So
I love
yeah.
that. I love that. And that's why we do these lives. I mean, the entire point
Exactly.
is that we want people to meet. I mean, clearly it's virtual, but to really
Yeah.
meet other people they might not necessarily get a chance to have a conversation with. And I think it's one of the things, as a kind of preview, Allison is going to be talking about next week. Next week? Yeah, she's going to talk about kind of networking things. And I think it's one of the things that a lot of people, especially when it comes to business, really struggle with when it comes in that kind of package of, okay, well, I might want something like a business relationship with that person, but I don't know them yet. So how do I even go about that? I don't necessarily want to be like besties, but I do want to have a good relationship. So what does that look like? And a lot of people, if they've never had a
Mhm.
business before and they've never gone through any type of training, it's one of those things like they don't know how to do that, how to connect with people as human beings and really see, you know, are they going to be someone that I can really vibe with? And I
Mhm.
love
Mhm.
how, you know, your approach is so open because
Mhm.
it does. And that's one of the things. So like if you're watching right now or you're watching a replay, I mean, reach out to Karla because
Yeah,
this is how
please.
open that she is. Like I mean, you don't have to, and I think this is the other thing. Sometimes people think that they need to have like this whole script ready. Like, hi, Karla, my name is, and I was wondering if, you know, like it doesn't
I
have.
mean, if you come that way to me, that'll be adorable, and we can still vibe, you know, because frankly, I have a soft spot for, like, you know, folks that consider themselves awkward, because I know what that feels like. I felt that the majority of my young adult life, you know. I think I've grown into this person that is more comfortable speaking my truth openly to whomever, and I've had a lot of practice because I did push myself to do that. I had to in many instances, and so, but I wasn't always like that. And it's a lot of, like, it's really a lot of self development, you know, and I think we all require that, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be a space that you walk into that maybe is not the most comfortable space for you. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
somehow, if you're trying to either get something out of that or at least survive, right? You got to make sure that you have some skill sets that you can, like, fall back on to get you out of that situation. And man, for me, people skills, like, you know, the social skills are really, really important. Again, though, I'm my background's education, so I really do believe that that is important for human development.
Right. Well, and I mean, going back to the topic of intersectionality, I think that's a big part of
Mhm.
it. Like we want these conversations that we do in our lives for people to be able to be like, that's me. Like
Mhm.
we're the same. And that's where
Yeah.
intersectionality really becomes these building bridges that you have,
Mhm.
because it's like, oh, wait, I know someone
Mhm.
that, because
Yeah.
at that point, then it's no longer just this other whatever it is, because it's a person and you know that person,
Exactly.
and the person becomes more than a race, a skin color, becomes more than, you know, who they love or, you know, what they look like. It's
Mhm.
a person. And so
Right.
getting to know them and then being able to, whether you're voting for
Mhm.
or, you know, choosing the way that you live your life that's going to
Mhm.
either help or hurt someone
Mhm.
else that you know. I mean, that's really what it's all about. So I love that.
Yes. You're absolutely right. I also, though, do think that we all need to push ourselves a little bit when we think of ourselves as the ones that really are on the right side and have it all figured out, right? Because at the end of the day, this would not be happening if this wasn't what we experience in this country, right? Like, we are in this situation because we haven't known how to really talk about these things honestly. We don't talk about our history honestly. You know, we have bought into a lot of the lies that, you know, now are blowing up in our face. And so many of us who just are now waking up are like, it's hurting like a lot, right? But for others, it's been hurting for a lot longer, and people have been awake a lot longer, and we're like, hurry up, you know? And so all I have to say when it comes to that stuff is that, like, it is up to each of us, right, to look at ourselves honestly and figure out where it is that we are not, like, aligning with what we think, what we say, and how we behave, right? And push yourself to really recognize, like, how, you know, that thing that you might be judging, you might be actually doing yourself in some other way, in some other fashion, right? I do that all of the time. I'm constantly checking myself and all of the isms that I also fall into, you know, all of the things that are part of the training that I've received as well, because it's important that I don't ever get comfortable thinking that I know it all, because I don't. Everybody's experience is different, and I'm here to hear about it. And if I need to be checked because for whatever reason I'm not understanding, right, because of my own experience, right, then I need to, like, listen to that and sit with that. And, you know, obviously, I think, you know, my general direction is one where, like, hey, we need to be more progressive and be more inclusive. And that means we need to face, like, you know, this country's racism, the fact that it was rooted in that, that's how it started, right? And really understand how all of that ties into what we're experiencing right now. Like, you can't divorce that, right? Similarly, you can't tell me you love me, right? Like, and but that, like, you're okay with voting for things that, like, hurt me, like, literally take away rights that, you know, I've just recently gained, or, like, you know, and then there's, like, you know, and then there are other things that, like, we don't even talk about because it's like we don't make the space for it because we're all kind of, like, trying to survive and just, you know, move forward and do the best that we can, and it feels like too much, and so we end up feeling weighted down and we don't engage. And I think that's where a lot of people find themselves. And so I'm looking for opportunities for folks that are ready to have some of these conversations and really be honest, you know, with themselves, and so we can be honest with each other, because I don't want to live in a bubble. Bubbles suck. They're always bursting. Like, I've been in many, like, and they always burst, and you feel all, like, shattered, that, like, oh, the bubble that I thought it was this thing and it wasn't. Yeah, and you're going to experience that again probably, right? So, like, let's just face the realities that we have, right? And address them for what they are, so we can actually learn and move on to that next level kind of world that we say we want, right? So, yeah, anyway, what was your question?
That's no, I love it, because it's that growth mindset, you know, like,
Hmm.
if you ever get to the
That's
point of,
exactly what it is.
no, I'm good and I'm
Hmm.
right, that's the danger zone, because
Way to use that education jargon. That's exactly
ah,
what it is.
I love
Trust
Carol.
me.
Carol's
Yeah.
like awesome. Carol's like,
Exactly. Yes.
she's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but those are the things that, I mean, I mean, anything in education, and I
Hmm.
mean, you know, we're all about education, because whether you're learning about marketing or business operations or
Hmm.
automation or racism or how to just
Hmm.
be a better human and love
Hmm.
people better, I mean, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter, because we're all on that journey. And so if you deny yourself, like, I'm good, like, I've reached some pinnacle point, you know,
Right.
you're denying yourself the opportunity for that next step, for that next growth
Hmm.
point. So absolutely.
And we all need that push, you know, like, you know, there are people that are not in our spaces, and we need to recognize that, you know, as much as we might say that, like, I'm fine with everybody, right? But if your spaces are primarily, you know, just of one type, right? Then chances are you're in a bubble, and you need to burst that bubble a little bit if you actually want to expand your circles. You know, maybe you want to stay in the bubble. Go ahead, stay in the bubble. It's your choice, you know. But I know there are a lot of people that don't. They don't want to be there. I know that. Like, I can see it, I can feel it, and people struggle with figuring out how to authentically come together, knowing, like, you have to know that there are going to be awkward moments. You're probably going to mess up in some way, right? But if you're both willing to, like, work it, then, you know, that's what our relationships are, right? Like, let's think about, like, our, you know, romantic relationships, right? Those things take work. That's not easy, you know. And, like, you know, you throw everything that's going on into that relationship, it makes it that much more challenging, right? I wanna be able to, you know, as an industry, really be more supportive of the people, of the human beings, because I know, yes, we're an industry like every other, making money. You know, we do need that, you know, especially especially the communities that I'm here to support and try to amplify and elevate, we need that. We need to grow that wealth so that we can actually be able to create the things that we want, right? That's very important. But at the same time, at least for me, and I know I'm not alone, many of us don't feel really good about the way that the systems are set up when it comes to business, when it comes to capitalism, right? And so I think right now there's a lot of opportunity to really be honest with ourselves and connect with others that are looking to do it differently. That's why I'm so excited about this summit. You know, Jordan Maney is the bomb. I love this woman, and I know everybody does too who knows her. And my sister and I are incredibly fortunate to be able to be part of this because we do want to talk about these things that matter to us. And I know they don't just matter to us; they matter to many people. They matter to our couples, you know. So yeah, I hope that whoever you are that's watching this right now, I hope you make it there. So please check out, get those tickets. It's on all of our
Yeah,
link please. So
it, it
you
is.
can find the tickets.
Yes, and it's those are the things that I think are so important to make sure that people understand. It's not just a book. It's not just a podcast episode. It's not just an email that you get or, you know, something that you like on Instagram. It's so much more. And if you don't understand people who are really behind that, as you said, intentionally inclusive, intentionally embracing, intentionally loving. That's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things. I mean, you have to be intentional about it, but the intentionality cannot be like a one time. It's not like it's not like, oh, I took my shower, or oh, you know, I brushed my teeth. It's not like you're checking off boxes. It has to be this really this shift in the way that you see the world and the way that you want to live, because it is, it's just like you said, it's our lives, and it is. So it's like if you're not willing to put in that work and really understand people that you might not necessarily have otherwise known, you're not going to change.
Exactly.
And that's, I think that's part of it. One of the things that I know that you had mentioned before, so like the intersectionality for you when it comes to your business, politics, and faith, which I think are three things that a lot of people find to be so polarizing, so, you know, opposite, you know, ends of the spectrum. How is it that you kind of embody those three things and that intersection of them in your life, but also in your business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that for me, like I've been for the past, I think, 4 years definitely, but more than that, and I've been on this like very real journey of making sure that I am aligned, like my politics and my behavior, you know, and what I think and what I do is aligned, right? And it's been very challenging because I never really like politics is not something that I loved, you know, like I just kind of more and more started engaging with because who I am is political, right? So I couldn't avoid it, right? So like that was definitely part of my journey as I was growing up, right? And it's just something that ended up becoming more and more real as it just became older and older and older. And I kept going into situations, into spaces where I was seeing the systemic racism, the systemic oppressive systems that are meant to keep some here and others here, you know, and it just doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel good to me. And so I, you know, before I've been in, you know, again, space of education and nonprofits, right? So like doing that work sort of like gives you a little bit of a cushion, sort of, right? Because of course your politics must be aligned, although that's not always the case, right? But like at least, you know, you feel like you're doing, look, your job already requires you to like, you know, give and do service, right? And I think that's the case for any kind of job that requires you to give of yourself in a very service-oriented way, right? But it doesn't necessarily, that's not necessarily the case. And I started really thinking about how like really my, like what I thought and what I believed in, like needed to match with like how I was behaving, needed to match with like the causes that I supported. Like I just needed to get more and more aligned, right? But it wasn't until I was totally broken that I sort of realized that like this on its own isn't working, like, you know, and so that's where I started becoming more open to my faith. Something that I rarely talk about because again, it's something new. It's like a more, it's a newer journey for me because I sort of shut myself off to my faith a long time ago because of the way that my religion was, perceiving me and messaging like who I am, and what basically how I should be judged just because I'm a queer person, right? And so I've come back to my faith, right? Because honestly, out of like to some degree desperation, because everything that I was experiencing, right? Because things weren't like, as much as I was trying to align them, right? They weren't aligning because the systems are such that really it makes you feel kind of like, like just like your cries aren't being heard, and you feel like a bit of despair, right? Um, and so, mind you, during this time, this is all like, during 45's administration, but I also, I got divorced, and at the same time, I was being pushed out of my job, So those two things were happening, and it was all related, it was all related, right? Because I was at a place now where I was raging. I was raging at the injustice that I personally had been experiencing, that for the longest time I was just managing and doing, what I could to try to like fight it in different ways, right? But I was now at the point where I was seeing all of this injustice sort of blow up in my face in all of the different spaces that I was in. And it was very painful, and it led me to like kind of get to a really low place, right? Well, like happens for many of us, right? It's when you get to that place, that's when all of a sudden, like, something hits you, something wakes you up, and for me, and for many folks, I know it's their faith, right? Now, when I say faith, I'm not talking about any religious dogma, because Lord knows I would not be able to really do justice to anyone, right? But I was raised Catholic, I have a, Judeo-Christian like background in terms of my general knowledge base, right? But I grew up with an incredibly like, Renaissance sort of woman who was like super spiritual, my mother, who very much embraced a lot of Eastern philosophies and, religious ideas, or spiritual ideas. And so once I was ready to embrace my faith, it sort of like just blew up and opened up into this space that like, I don't really have a clear definition. All I can say is I do believe in a higher power, and I believe that that higher power is also in me. And I believe that that's the case for every single one of us, whether you believe it or assign it any kind of labels, then that's for you to do, because that's your right, and we live in a country that claims religious freedoms. I know we have a lot of people that fight for it, but many folks are fighting for a particular type of religious freedom. And that's something that we need to address, especially those of us that claim to be people of faith,
Right.
So for me, again, it's about alignment, right? So more recently, I've introduced the faith piece, which I think has been incredibly important, particularly as it's been the religious right, and folks that are, I don't even know what to call what's going on really with their experience, but there's got to be a lot of cognitive dissonance, right? Because how do you claim, a faith that believes in God and believes in, love and believes in, sort of siblinghood, right? But then like, you support these things. So I don't know what's going on. That's something that, I have plenty of ideas, but that's not for this conversation. But the point is that for me, I needed to, I guess, go through everything that I needed to go through so that I can start growing my compassion for folks that are very different from me, and the folks that are very different from me are folks that like right now are fighting, against a lot of what I stand for and a lot of what I want to do. And so this time of like politics and the fact that now this is new for me. I've come from a nonprofit world, so I'm trying to figure out how to do business in a very aligned way, aligned to what I believe in and what I practice. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be superficial. I don't want it to be disconnected. I want it to be simply an expression of who I am, right? And that's my business. I want to, like, whatever it is that I produce, the service that I offer, the purpose that I have in this way to create, I want it to be aligned with, what I believe to be true from like a more spiritual, sense, but also from a like civic minded sense where like, this is what I want for myself and my loved ones and the people of the world, really, And so that's what my struggle is right now. And I think it's a struggle for all of us. And I want to be able to connect with folks to talk about that a little bit, because none of us have it figured out. I have yet to meet any one person that has it all figured out, because a lot of it doesn't make sense. We're in a very kind of confusing time, but I think that we can make sense of it. I think that we are going to need to invest in figuring out ways to heal and build bridges. And I take from I try to use every space and every interaction as an opportunity to learn, but hopefully also spread some kind of message that really does help, support this idea that we are actually in this together, and more alike than we are different, right? In spite of all of our beautiful differences, because I never want to deny that. I love the diversity that exists in this world, in this country. I'm grateful for that. But we do need to do a better job of showing that and embracing that and loving that, and like really living up to that, because Jesus, we should be thrilled that there's so much diversity, rather than fight it and try to like take us back to like, I don't know, 1950, 1800, I don't know what period some people want to go back to, but like, I'm ready to move forward. Yes, I know we have a lot of work to do, but I'm ready to start envisioning a very different, world than what we have right now. And I think I'm not alone. And so I'm looking to connect with more folks that are into that. And if some of what I'm hearing doesn't like ring a bell, you think I'm like, whatever, nutty, then that's cool. I want to talk to you too, because chances are there's probably something that we can talk about that like would help us see each other for the human beings that we are, completely flawed, brilliantly stupid sometimes, and just brilliant other times human beings. So yeah, connections.
And that's exactly it, because you can't have true intersectionality without understanding that people who are going to be very, very different from you are also going to have something that you're going to connect on.
Mm-hmm.
You might not know what that is right
Mm-hmm.
out the gate, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have those conversations,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is so important. I think sometimes it's scary for some people to have conversations with others when they know that there are things that maybe offend or hurt them that the other person's doing or has done or supports. But I think those conversations are super important, because if we want to be that change, if we want to really live in that world that's going to be better than the 1800s
Yeah.
or 1950, then we have to be willing to do that hard work. And that's hard. Like, I think it's so much, and that's why it's so much easier to just draw lines and be like, you're there, I'm here, we're not going to have this conversation because we don't understand each other. We want things. But when you understand that there's that intersectionality to that person and to you build, like, you can't help but build that bridge, because you have that shared experience, that shared love, whatever that is. So I love that that's the premise of everything that you do, because I think that's important.
But I have to say two things. One is it's very important when I say that, and for people to understand that I'm also speaking with a lot of privilege, okay? I need people to understand that there are some folks that and I've been in those situations where I wasn't even safe. My safety was threatened, and I had to decide whether or not, how far I could go, right? That's a real experience for many folks, and which is the reason why not everybody is going to speak up in the same way, right? So I need folks to understand that, like, if you have privilege, right, and that includes the privilege of being able to talk to people in this way, right? But I am talking about, like, if you have white privilege, if you have male privilege, if you have cis privilege, if you have whatever privilege you have, because we all have it, right? Then it's a perfect opportunity, right, for you to use that, right, and figure out how to have conversations within folks that are, in your spaces that need to hear a different perspective, right? And then listen more than speak, maybe, right? But listen when you're in spaces where you're the one with the greater privilege and someone's trying to say something that maybe it maybe even stings, right? It doesn't feel comfortable, but like, listening is the biggest thing that you can do. When you feel your defenses go up, you gotta pause for a second, get yourself together, breathe, do whatever you got to do before you start trying to explain away somebody else's, you know, whatever they have to say to you, right? Because I think that many of us find ourselves in that situation and we don't know how to stop it. It's just like an automatic thing. Like, please don't think I'm whatever, you know, it's like that's what we do. We don't want people, especially in our industry, we want, you know, we're so image conscious, all about like, you know, getting it right. Everything has to be beautiful, everything has to be perfect, right? Well, those are the folks that are going to be very reactive when you try to accuse them of like whatever, some mistake that they make, right? But I have found that lately I have been able to, you know, very directly talk to some folks who react that way and like, you know, say like, hey, just so you know, this, you just telling me that this thing that happened was unintentional, right? That right there is actually something that you need to check, right? Because that's not what I need to hear. You know, that is not the way that you want to approach the situation, right? And so we're able to have those conversations. But again, I recognize that that's because of where I'm at right now, you know, the space that I'm in right now, like myself, right, with myself, right, and also kind of like where I'm at in life, I'm able to do that. But that wasn't always the case. So I don't ever judge someone for not like, you know, speaking up about something, you know, especially if there's somebody who has, you know, is part of a marginalized community or or has an identity that, you know, comes with it, like experiences that you may not have a clue about, you know. But if you have more privilege, like cis white men, like I talk to like, you know, my brother-in-law all the time, like, you know, yeah, use that privilege and start talking to the folks that need to hear from you the most, right? So yeah, talk to your boys. Anyway, but but the point is that like I think it's incredibly important for us when we have these conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and like just trying to uh, um, be real and hold each other accountable, that we also do it very consciously with a lens of our own privilege, right? Because again, it might be something that some folks can do more easily than others. And I never want to ignore that reality. Yeah. What was the other point I was going to make? Darn, I forgot.
I
Oof,
that is
I
that's
don't remember.
so important that people understand. You know, it's not just about this objective, my opinion, you're like, this is what I think. It really does come down to that conversation and how you're approaching it
Hmm.
with your privilege in mind, because
Hmm.
that then changes the dynamic of that
Hmm.
conversation. And so
Exactly.
if you do have any privilege, to understand that you should be the one, if you are the one of privilege in that conversation, that you should be the one listening
Hmm.
and not talking, and careful of what you're feeling in terms of that defensiveness, because you can't grow otherwise if you're constantly explaining that away and saying like, well, that was because of, or I didn't mean it that way. That's not the point. Like you're trying,
Exactly.
like,
That's not
yeah,
the point. Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's amazing. But again, I'm feeling more hopeful. At least, you know, I'm fortunate to be in the spaces that I'm in where there are more. I've connected with a lot more like-minded people, and that includes the white allies, the white comrades that are, you know, in my camp. They are more aware, but they still need to do a lot of work that I think that, you know, it just feels never ending, you know, and aside from like, you know, coworkers and colleagues and peers in the industry, I'm talking really about the personal spaces that I'm in, you know, like my own girlfriend, you know, like we have to do a lot of work, you know, her and I, because like I am exactly like, this is who I am, this is how I speak in general, and I'm certainly going to talk about this stuff more directly, more honestly, probably more often with my partner, right, with the person that I'm making a life with. And so it gets hairy sometimes, you know, but like I have to think, I'm like, man, but if we can't figure this out, then who can, you know, because we're the ones that are like more, you know, more awake, more woke, however you want to say it. We're the ones that are more aware of what's going on, and we are trying to be more intentional, right? But it doesn't mean that we're not impacted by everything. It doesn't mean that we don't have our own experiences that we bring to the table that makes things a lot more challenging, right? And again, we're in a relationship, and all of our relationships can be, you know, challenging if we ourselves have a lot of work to do, you know, with ourselves. You know, it just becomes that much more not difficult, but just like more of a journey, right? There's gonna be more learning, right? Like I don't like to talk about like things being like uh and I don't like the idea that we can't work through things. Like, like, don't get me wrong, I was divorced, so I do believe that sometimes, it's best you part ways, right? But I also think it's important for us to know that if you're feeling like, oh my God, you don't know if you can make it with this person because they're driving you nuts, right? I mean, with everything that's happening with COVID, the political scene, everything, okay, take a deep breath because you're not alone, right? Like you're, with a bunch of other, folks out there that are in these romantic entanglements that are trying to make it work and figure it out. And that's what I love about this job. Like I meet so many people that are really like, they know that like, no, this marriage thing, I'm not buying into that nonsense that I was taught. Like I'm gonna do it my way, and that's incredibly inspiring. So yeah, like it's once again, it comes back down to like relationships, right? And making sure that that's the focus, which I think it is. And again, it's the alignment for me. So yeah, what else do you have?
Love it. I love it. I love it. I could talk to you all night. So we have
Yeah,
15 minutes left, and they're gonna
yes.
like cut us off because Instagram cuts us off at an hour. Um, on the go, Joe. Hey guys. I think it's one of those things when people kind of think about, and I think this is kind of our last topic, and this one we could talk about forever, I know.
Okay,
But
okay.
when it comes to politics and business, I think a lot of people are like, I don't want to post anything political. It's just business. I just want to post pretty pictures. And other people are like, no, you have to align with, your values, your, couple's values. You have to, kind of draw a line in the sand so people know what you're about. And that's what millennials want, which is what millennials want. However, what do you suggest to people when they are trying to decide what they're going to post and what they're not going to
Mhm,
post, or what they're
mhm.
going to say or not say? Because when it comes to your business, would you choose to officiate a wedding of two people who you don't agree with their personal life choices? On the flip side of like, if it's like two white supremacists and they're like, hi, we'd like you to officiate our wedding, like, what would you do? What would you say?
Well, okay, first of all, I'm obviously of a particular camp, right? If we're talking about like there are some folks that are like, no, everything has to be strictly business, I don't want to get the personal and political stuff, right? It's all about pretty pictures. Sure, there's that. And believe me, that's been the case for the majority of like my experience in the wedding industry, right? But more and more, like you said, right, if you want that millennial business, Lord knows Gen Z business is going to be probably even more, right? Yeah, like you need to start understanding that for many folks, including myself, like I want to support the businesses that support me, and so that's basically how we do business, right? Like we know from our own experiences how challenging it can be to be an other, to not be welcomed or embraced or sought after to be in these spaces, right? And you make it there and you feel so alone. And so like we know what that experience is like, and it's frustrating because it does continue to happen in all of our industries, right? In most of our spaces. And while we're seeing improvement, it still doesn't feel as authentic or as like, as comprehensive as maybe we would want it, right? It still feels piecemeal. And that's because a lot of people don't know which direction to go, right? But at the end of the day, it's a very personal decision. You're going to have to decide, if you are okay with attracting folks that are very, very, different from you and don't have like your value system right now. For some folks, that could be like a queer, black couple from the South, and like there, if you want business, right, but you're not like actually understanding that what you're displaying is not going to attract that couple, right, then you might need to shift, right? Similarly, like if your business for whatever reason is attracting like like a more of maybe folks that seem to be like you said, I don't know who's catering to white supremacists, I really don't, but like whatever it is that you envision in terms of like the clientele, um, but like then you have to decide if you're okay with that. Like, are you okay with being a business, having a company that doesn't stand for anything, or you just for the profits? Like, if you're okay with just standing for the profits, then hey, that's been the American way always, right? If that's where you want to, stay, then go ahead and stay there. I'm not gonna, take on that responsibility, right? But if you're for real about like actually moving forward in a world where there is more equity, where like diversity is embraced, where, you know, inclusivity isn't just like, let's get that one token whatever person there and like, ta-da, we're inclusive, right? If you want more than that, right, then you need to participate. And that means like, you know, get real with yourself and figure out the ways that you might be actually perpetuating the same white supremacist, you know, cis heteronormative systems that keep certain people out. And you have to decide why. Why are you doing that? Is it your own comfort level? Like, is it ignorance? I don't know. You got to decide for yourself. You know, that's not on me. Don't put that on me, you know, but I will tell you this. If you're down for really taking your business into a place where you are not just looking at it for the sake of making money, right? But you're looking at it as a true business owner with, you know, sure, money in mind. I'm not going to take that away from you. But like because you want to serve the people that are actually giving you that money, right? Like, I'm sorry, but I do have a problem if someone's like gonna take my money, but then like, you know, like is going to support like an anti a marriage or anti equal pay or anti whatever, right? That's going to be a problem for me. And so I think that for me, I feel because I feel ready for that kind of business to happen, then I want to be an option for other folks out there who want to put their money where their values are, right? Who want to support the kind of world that we say we want, right? But seems so difficult to get. Well, part of that is by actually paying people who don't right now have that kind of wealth, right? To like be able to make the kind of world that we want, right? Pay us. That's very important, you know? And at the same time, like, you know, those of us that are in these spaces, like we also have to like, you know, figure out if we're going to take that responsibility, because many of us also fall for the same, you know, the same thing. It's like, you know, or like, hey, I just made it here, so I'm just looking out for myself and making money because like you know, like that's it for me. Okay, you know what? Fine. But then when do we as a collective like really change? When do we really get like, you know, not just the piecemeal, not just the like, you know, one crumb here, one crumb there type of like equality and justice, you know? When do we get the whole darn, you know, what's it called? A buffet, you know, when do we get the whole thing? Like I want all of it. Like I want that kind of like authentic, you know, embracing of our differences, our authentic celebration of our differences. And look, we're not going to be able to all do and serve or serve like everybody. There's no way, you know. But like, you know, those like, are looking for services like ours, then we want to let them know that we're there for them, you know. And I know we're not alone either. But in terms of advice for people, what to post, I'm going to tell you this: if you are not well versed in a lot of these issues, then just don't post and educate yourself. Google is really your number one friend, and you know how to use it. You know how to use it, so use it. You know what I mean? And start reading, and please don't ask your one friend who represents like whatever this demographic that you're like, oh, you know, like, well, how do you feel about that? You know, it's like, no, do the research, you know, like do the work, you know, and then listen, you know, and just, yeah, pause, pause before you post. Like, do you know how many white women were crying on camera during the whole like the second wave of Black Lives Matter most recently over the summer, right? And like people were posting, especially with the black tile, right? When that fiasco, right? Like, wow, you know, like really, like, but hey, it happens, right? It happened. Are we gonna talk about it? Like, because I feel like now no one's talking about anything now, even though like, hey, none of that like went away, you know. It's still like we're still living in the same country that we were 6 months ago, you know, a year ago, 400 years ago, you know, whatever. Bring it back to, you know, the days of the colonizers who came through and like, you know, just did what they did, you know. Like we can't erase that, and so we need to confront that. And if I know there are people out there that want to and really want to do the work right now, right? But part of that is actually really doing some digging, doing some learning, and unlearning of things that you've been taught so that we can really get to some truth and really work together to make it better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why one of the things that a lot of people, when we were first kind of starting to have a lot of those conversations, and it was like the black tile, it was like, people, I can't believe this, and they're like crying and crying. I get it. I get that it's, I mean, to be aware or woke or whatever you want to call it, it can be overwhelming. And just like anything, it doesn't matter if it's about racism or your own racist ways, or like you realize you just hurt somebody that you love, right?
Hmm.
And you were not aware. That realization it's a tough pill to swallow. However, moving forward, you know, people are always like, oh, well, like Terica was on and we were joking. It was like, it's not like there's a black Google and you can't like type something into Google, you're going to find out what those resources are. It's not like it's like somehow obscured from like your ability to learn. No, it doesn't matter if you're talking about business, SEO, racism. It's all the same. Like you Google it, you're going to find an answer.
Hmm.
So, I mean, but you have to be willing to put in that work and take the responsibility. Hey, I don't know how to do that email automation sequence, or
Hmm.
I don't know how racist I really, yeah, maybe I should
Hmm.
learn,
Hmm.
and those are the things that you first have to take and accept that responsibility.
Right,
And
right,
so
right.
on our stories, we always try to post at least 5 different kind of thoughts for people to really think about. And they're all tappable, clickable, whatever you want to call it, so that you can go to those specific accounts and learn a little bit more and find out more
Yeah.
information, because those are things that, you know what, it might not be at the top of your list every morning. I get it. Maybe you're doing remote learning with your kids, or you have your own other issues that you need to take care of, and it's there. But those are
Hmm.
things that, like, that's just to get you started. And then,
Hmm.
like, you have to do the hard work after that. But that doesn't mean that there aren't resources and people like, and that, the summit is like a perfect example of that, because it's
Yeah.
like,
Join
that's,
us.
join us.
Yes. Yeah, seriously, like that's exactly it. Like, there are people out there that have been doing this work forever, and I have to tell you, like, I'm not one of them at all. But I'm in this space now, and I'm having these opportunities for a reason, because I'm connecting with folks that are interested in hearing some of the things I've had to say. And I feel the same way for the people that now I'm connecting with. The speaker panel is amazing. I'm so excited. Every single one of those human beings, okay, some of them I know better than others, but I love them all. You know who you are. Come and find out. But that is an incredibly important thing for all of us to remember, that at the end of the day, we are all students, right? And we all are coming to these spaces with some level of awareness, but then some spots that, we need to just keep in mind. Maybe we're just not seeing it. We have some blockers up, right? But if we come with, like, in the spirit of learning, in the spirit of, like, wanting to do better, right? Then that's a great start, right? But we do need to take ownership over when we do fall short, when we do, make a mistake, a misstep, and figure out a way to make that better. Don't run away from that. A lot of people do. A lot of people try to, again, they put up their defenses, right? And that's not going to work anymore. That's not going to work anymore. All of us, we keep talking about authenticity all the time and vulnerability and stuff, but, like, are we practicing it? Like, like Brene Brown's been, making loads of money, and good for her, because she has some really good stuff to share, right? But, like, are we practicing it? And I think that's something that's very important that we need to start doing, is practicing some of the things that we have been learning. There is a lot of information out there, like you said. Yeah, you can Google anything, right? But at the end of the day, I think the one-on-one interactions, or these kinds of platforms where we have these real conversations with one another, are there not enough of them. So we need more of them. So I'm, again, incredibly grateful for Jordan Maney. All the days, amazing. So glad that I'm going to be working with her and all these beautiful human beings, to, like, just, put out there some of the stuff that it seems like people want to hear. And, like, while we may not be experts, we have a lot to offer. And we are the ones that have been doing a lot of the research, have been, like, tuned into a lot of this stuff, and, like, have done a lot of the learning from our own lives that we're now applying to our businesses, right? Because we're talking about a crew of many, fairly new entrepreneurs, right? All with very different backgrounds. And we're bringing all of those experiences to the table here, with a message of really hope and unity, and the desire to really take business to the next level, which we see as one that doesn't have to be like, you don't have to pick and choose between like, becoming independently wealthy and being abundant, living an abundant life, and like just and like being like a greedy jerk. Like no, those are not our only. Like you're not gonna be poor and good or a greedy jerk. Like I know that we have those dichotomies in our heads. Like no, like there's way more in the middle, right? And I think
Right.
I honestly think that we're moving towards a direction where there is going to be more alignment in terms of our business practices, because I'm looking at the youth, those beautiful young people that are coming behind us, man. They got it going on. They are mature in a way that I just, I'm really excited about and really eager to support. And so I'm always going to listen to those voices. So if you tell me someone's radical, that's exactly who I want to listen to, because chances are they're going to push my thinking, right? When someone tells me and I'm not talking about like conspiracy theory radical. I'm talking about my like
You
hardcore
might
like
be like, and then Karla said,
yeah, no. So that's why I have to clarify. I recognize, but I'm talking about folks that are actually like pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits in terms of the way that they are just very directly and honestly addressing the injustices. No holds barred. Like they're gonna rage at you, and good. They should be raging at you. Because what they have to say is real. I remember what that was like when I was raging. I'm in a different space right now, so like I'm gonna do things maybe a little bit differently, but I will never stop listening to the voices that are loudly, clearly telling me that something's wrong here. Even if I don't see it, I'm going to pay attention, because chances are something is wrong there. Like my world, again, we all live in bubbles, right? Like, yeah, okay, maybe I don't see it in my bubble, but it exists and I should be paying attention, right? And no, we can't take it all on, but we also can't just like dig our heads in the sand and pretend nothing's happening, right? So you got to also move forward with the trusting that you're not alone, and that you do what you can when you can, right, to help. And there are others that are going to pick up when maybe it's too much for you in the moment, right? That's what we have to remember. So, but always press on and do what you can in all of your spaces in the best way that you can. I think that's important.
well, with that, I have nothing else to say. Karla just took, I love it. And that's the thing is it like like I said, if you're listening now or if you're listening to a replay, definitely check out Karla. So Once Upon a Vow and then Queer Officiant. So those
Yes.
two Instagram accounts. But hit her up, ask her questions, talk to her. Like she said, you don't have to have a beautiful script written out, or you don't have to worry about feeling awkward. I mean, these are
I'm
conversations.
awkward. I love awkward folks.
But this is the thing it's those conversations and finding our the commonalities, things that we really can vibe on. Those are the places that we actually get to build bridges. And so I love that you want to build bridges. I do too. And I'm just glad that.
No. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your
Yep.
time. And to anyone who's watching, again, check out our Ally to Advocate Summit, and please just be part of our community. We are a group that loves people and want to build bridges. So that's pretty cool, right? Infrastructure, yeah. Anyway, try to stay chill for the rest of this, waiting period. Calm, meditate, do whatever you got to do. Take care of yourself. Mwah.
Right. All right. Have a
Bye.
great night, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks
Bye.